Howdy do, ladies and turds, and welcome back to another lovely video. As you remember last week, I talked about my Nintendo Switch 2 expectations and hopes right before the upcoming Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. I have a lot of thoughts to share, just like many of you do, on the good things about this Direct and this new console that I like a lot, but then also a lot of things that are very negative that I wish Nintendo would have done differently. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably have already heard about, all the Nintendo Switch 2 upgrades, all the details, all the different features that it comes with, but I'm just going to quickly go through some of the ones that stood out for me. So first of all, the Nintendo Switch 2 is launching soon on June 5th for $450. That is a little bit more than I thought it'd be, but considering that everything I've seen and everything it has to offer, it does seem kind of reasonable at this point. Starting off, the Nintendo Switch 2 games are 1080p at 120 FPS by default. Not only that, but Nintendo Switch 1 games get these upgrades too, like improved resolution and improved frame rate. But if you have the dock itself, it can go up to 4K in 60 FPS. And even the dock now has a fan in it too, instead of just the motherboard. So that's going to help a lot with some of those like hardcore and intensive games on this console. Not only that, but the Joy-Cons themselves are a bit larger as well. They also have a new button, it's a C button, which introduces game chat. It lets you play any game on the console, on the Switch 2, and share it with your friends at the same time. It is something that has been requested for a very long time. It's a feature that's been on PlayStation and Xbox consoles and PC for years now, so I'm glad that Switch has kind of, caught up to that. The only thing that's bootleg though, is they confirmed that this feature, Game Chat, is only for Nintendo Switch Online members, which makes no sense at all and it's dumb. I hope that they change that sometime along the line. I would have really liked to play Switch 2 games directly to Discord or to Twitch without needing a capture card or anything, right? If you just want to play, or maybe just to share with your friends and not need Nintendo's bootleg online service membership. And then the frame rate on your friends' screens is also very low too. Would have been nice if it was, at least 30 FPS and running smoothly, but I don't know, maybe you'll get like a feature update later on. Not only that, but it was confirmed that the Joy-Cons are indeed going to act like mice as well, and not just one mouse, but two. So depending on the game, like RTS games like Civilization 7 have been confirmed to have a mouse support feature for the Nintendo Switch 2, and that is awesome. Something I'm happy to say though is that game share from the 3DS has returned, which means on certain games such as Super Mario 3D World, if one person has a copy of that game, you can share that copy with your friends and all of them can play at the same time, like 4 players with only one person having a copy of that game, and that is awesome. Not only that, but there was a new accessory announced, and that was the Nintendo Switch 2 camera, which looks kind of derpy, of course, but when you see it in gameplay and, kind of being used with the game chat feature, it actually looks like it could be a lot of fun. The thing that's hogwash is I'm guessing you have to buy Nintendo's camera themselves, and you can't plug in maybe through a USB your own camera. That would have been very convenient. But if you have this camera and certain games that kind of support it, such as Mario Party Jamboree, it creates some fun, exciting and new mini games. And I was laughing like crazy seeing this with my brother, just seeing how derpy these players are and they're dancing. It reminded me of those PlayStation 2 camera, right? Like from a million years ago, and maybe even the Kinect. Moving on from there, let's talk about the games. So Mario Kart World is launching alongside the Nintendo Switch 2. We have over 24 playable characters, from all the baby characters to the normal characters to even new ones that we've never seen before, such as a cow. You can play as the Moo Moo cow from Mario Kart, and that is awesome. I saw that, I got excited. I'm like, oh my god, you can play as a cow. How great is that? It completely won my heart, and I want to play this game just to experience playing as a cow. So you have transforming plane, you have a jet ski, these kart mechanics, everything looks kind of like Diddy Kong Racing and the Sonic Transform racing games, right? And having grown up with Jet Set Radio Future 2, I can say now that grinding alongside the rail is going to be such a satisfying feature in Mario Kart World. Not only that, but also like parkouring alongside the walls is going to be very creative. I wonder if you can use these new mechanics to dodge the blue shells whenever they're coming against you. And it seems like even anti-gravity might be back too. It has a continuous mode that lets you seamlessly go from one cup to the next across the entire world, which is awesome. There's also a free roam mode where it lets you explore courses and find different shortcuts that you might not have found while racing the courses themselves. And not only that, but I love the art style of this new Mario Kart game. It reminds me of those old Nintendo 64 Mario Kart figurines. I have one somewhere on the shelf over there too. And I like that. Every single character kind of has a new redesign and the whole world is colorful but yet still very detailed. Their first party games, they just look and run so well on the Nintendo Switch 2, at least from what I've seen so far. Everything I see about this game, not just from the direct, but from the Treehouse event, from the gameplay, everything just looks top notch, right? Like they took what they learned from Mario Kart 8 and they evolved. They made it a next Mario Kart and it actually feels like that. But the thing that's like, it really, makes me angry, and a lot of other people agree too. Apparently this game is $80. It's gonna be $80, which is insane. Nintendo, how about you bring the prices down, right? Make it $50. Make your games $50. Make that the new standard. Like I remember back in the toddler days, having to wait either for Christmas or my birthday, or maybe saving some money every now and then, just so I can barely afford like $40, right, for a new game. Let alone something that costs $80, twice the amount? Are you serious? It is too expensive. $80 is too expensive. Something I mentioned at the end of last week's video was I wish there was a new Donkey Kong game. And not just the remakes or ports from the Wii U, but an actual new one. And I'm happy to say that Donkey Kong Bonanza has arrived. It is a new open world 3D Donkey Kong game that looks amazing. He hasn't had one since the Nintendo 64 days. This is his second open 3D platformer, right? And it looks amazing. I first thought this was Super Mario Odyssey 2 because everything that I saw looked familiar to Mario Odyssey. And I'm guessing the same developers, worked on this game too. And so now the fact that we're getting a similar kind of game to that, except with Donkey Kong, I couldn't be happier. Like everything I'm seeing about this game makes me want to buy a Switch 2. Like the developers really went all out with this game and it shows. The huge kind of like gimmick for Donkey Kong Bonanza is that everything, all the terrain, everything you can interact with is completely destructible. You can create your own path, you can dig underground, you can just destroy everything, find secrets, and it's encouraged too, right? If you look at your map, it's reflected in real time, so you can see exactly where you've been, you can see just how much damage you've done to the terrain right there. And so kind of how like Tears of the Kingdom had the whole crafting mechanic going on, this game reminds me of that, except instead of crafting, everything can be completely taken apart and destroyed. I also love how expressive Donkey Kong is. His faces are funny. I keep laughing every time I see him make a new face. He has a new little sidekick called Odd Rock. Unfortunately, it seems to replace Diddy Kong. He got replaced by like a alien purple talking rock. So a little tear. But there might be hope for all our Diddy Kong fans out there, because Cranky Kong was shown to be in this game. So maybe the other Kongs are here too. Who knows? I wonder if Dixie's in here too. Maybe can we play as her as like unlockable modes after you beat the game or something? That would be awesome. And not only that, but when I showed Chevy T that there's a new Donkey Kong game, and I showed him all of the different features for the Switch 2, he said that he's gonna pick one up just for this game in July. So if that's true, hopefully I get a chance to play it too, because this game looks amazing. Everything I see about this game is just screams creativity, and I want it. I'm so glad that it's coming out in July and not the end of the year or next year or anything like that, right? And now, something that completely blew me away is Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. It looks stunning on the Switch 2 and in 4K. I cannot believe that this is real, right? And I was completely like drooling over the fact that this, what you're seeing right now on screen, this is in-game cutscene. This is how Metroid Prime 4 starts. It looks like a movie. The footage you're seeing on screen here is of the game playing in 4K on OLED display. I didn't know the OLED can look this good, let alone Metroid. Like I said, I cannot emphasize enough just how insane it is that we're getting a Metroid game, that Nintendo actually took the time to create something this magical for the Metroid franchise. Makes me cry. And every time I keep seeing this footage, I keep telling myself that this looks like a fan-made PC remaster, right? With HD texture packs and different mods just to make the game look a million times better. But no, this is the game. This is playing on real Nintendo hardware. It looks this good. I'm not going crazy. It looks like a movie being played in real time. Like, that is insane that we're at a level where Nintendo not only has a console that can output in 4K and all these little details and can actually handle stuff like that, but we're at a time where Nintendo is making a Metroid Prime 4 in 4K with this detail and with all of these hardware like upgrades in mind, and for a Metroid game, right? Like, if you told me this was possible 10 years ago, I would have laughed at you. All of the Metroid fans out there, you know, you understand. Back in the Wii U and 3DS days, where Nintendo kind of forgot about Metroid until the very end of those two consoles, right? And the fact that the Switch 2 isn't even out yet, and it hasn't been out for, it's not even out yet, and yet they're able to make a game that looks this amazing. The fact that they pulled this off somehow is insane. And I can't wait. I'm drooling just thinking about it. Not only that, but it's also confirmed that Metroid Prime 4 has a performance mode and a quality mode. So one of them can run at 720p at 120 FPS, all the way up to 4K 60 frames per second. Not only that, but of course, if it wouldn't be a Metroid Prime game without the scanning has returned, and just like every other Metroid Prime game, it's kind of a double-edged sword for me, right? I love scanning in the Metroid Prime series, but at the same time, I spend like 90% of the game in scanning mode because I don't want to miss anything. And so that's going to bring back all those memories of, having to do that all over again. If you want, you can play Metroid Prime, how you always do with your controller and whatever. You can also hold the back button and whatnot and do like gyro controls. But the new one that they added was mouse controls, and I'm very excited for this. You can play Metroid Prime, right? One hand has the Joy-Cons where you're moving, but if you move the other Joy-Con, kind of like mouse mode where it's on the table, it automatically translates into the game and it switches to mouse mode. And now you're aiming Samus's arm cannon here with the mouse style controls. And then if you don't want to play like that anymore, you just pick up the Joy-Con like normal and then it goes back to normal. That is so cool that they got that to work so easily and so seamlessly. I wouldn't mind waiting until I get to experience this on the Switch too, right? Because of these new, not just visuals, but these new features that are capable with this game. I'm telling you, I'm so excited. I was there when they announced this so many years ago. I also understand why people might be angry too, because I had the same feeling back when Breath of the Wild came out, right? And it was delayed on the Wii U after so many years, just so you can get a better version released on the Nintendo Switch 1 on the same day. It feels like Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch 1 is playable, luckily, but seeing the footage between the Switch 1 and Switch 2 looks like it's almost completely like a different game. Like, it feels like it can't have that fanciness of the Switch 2, and so they had to kind of like lower down the graphics and everything just to make it hopefully run well on the Switch 1. Now, one of the biggest things about the Nintendo Switch 2 was backwards compatibility, because it continues kind of like the Switch family. Luckily, Nintendo Switch 1 games are backwards compatible with the Nintendo Switch 2. However, the way Nintendo kind of utilized this is very weird. They say that there's the Nintendo Switch 1 games, there's Nintendo Switch 2 games, and then there's Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games. 3 different game types that can be played on this new console. And Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games offer like unique features and, upgrades, smoother FPS, upgraded visuals, maybe even side story DLC added, stuff like that to Nintendo Switch 1 games. For example, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they finally run at a smooth 60 FPS in HDR mode too, so the games never looked better. They even showed like side-by-side comparison of the 2 games and what it looks like. I am amazed that Korok Forest no longer runs at 5 FPS. Not only that, but now there's like this new Zelda phone app which kind of acts like a GPS in the game and lets you find certain enemies or items or whatever you want. I would actually really like to play, the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Tears of the Kingdom, where it's running smoothly and I don't have to worry about my fan on the Switch 1 having a heart attack. Like, that'd be awesome. However, the thing that's unfortunate is that these upgrades are not free. They're probably going to cost maybe $10 or more, but you have to pay for these upgrades if you want to experience them on the Nintendo Switch 2, which is complete hogwash. I was hoping that whenever you have a Nintendo Switch 1 game, you can instantly put it into your console and it'll already have the upgraded version ready for you to play right there on the spot. Like I said, I believe that these Nintendo Switch 2 features for Nintendo Switch 1 games should be free, or at the minimum, all these upgrades should be available for your Switch Online members, right? For people who are paying for this online service, at least make it free for them. And now, something that has been requested for a very long time, and I mentioned in my last week's video, are GameCube games being playable on the Nintendo Switch 2. And we got confirmation that GameCube games are coming to the Switch Online service. I'm guessing Nintendo couldn't figure out how to get GameCube games running smoothly on the Switch 1, so they made it a Switch 2 exclusive, and they announced that Legend of Zelda Wind Waker is being released for this, F-Zero GX, Soul Calibur, and a number of different games too, right? Like Super Mario Sunshine, Chibi Robo, Pokemon, Luigi's Mansion, all kinds of games, which means we might get Star Fox Adventures on the Switch 2, right? We might get Eternal Darkness on the Switch 2. We might get Mario Kart Double Dash finally on the Switch 2. How awesome would that be, right? With like online features where you can play with your friends and you don't have to be in the same room. Then they did show 4 Swords being played on the game chat feature too. I'm not sure if this is the Game Boy Advance 4 Swords or if this is the GameCube 4 Swords. But either way, they showed the ability to play this game online with 4 people sharing their screen. And that is awesome. I'm still hoping that they remake the game for proper like Nintendo Switch 2 hardware. That'd be top notch, but I guess this is good enough for now until that day happens. However, the thing that's bootleg is they released Wind Waker on this GameCube Online feature, right? And I'm excited because I love Wind Waker. I have the game on the GameCube, I have the game on the Wii U. However, that's not what I asked for. Nintendo, you know what fans want. We want the Wind Waker HD remaster from the Wii U ported over to the Switch. I know it's gonna happen, same with Twilight Princess. It's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if it's gonna be delayed until like 2027 when that Zelda movie comes out, right? Unfortunately, I would have loved if the remake was announced and, it was coming out this year. But, little tear, it's not. And then, with F-Zero GX being available on the GameCube Online service, that is awesome, right? Unfortunately, it's not a new entry in the series though, so fans are gonna have to wait a little bit longer, but it's a good start at least. I know for someone who's been a fan of Metroid for a very, very long time and how Nintendo handled that franchise back in the day, I know how much it hurts, right? And then now seeing that they're actually enjoying Samus being around and making these new games for the franchise, I believe that F-Zero and Star Fox and all these other dormant franchises could eventually get the same treatment from Nintendo too. Especially now that Kirby Air Rides is back. The game was originally also only available on the GameCube, and that was well over 20 years ago. It hasn't received any other sequels, any other ports, nothing. Whereas out of nowhere, Sakurai, the same director as, Smash Bros. And Kirby Air Ride, he came back to create this new sequel, which is not only good news for fans of Kirby Air Ride, but also fans of GameCube games, right? And who knows? One day we might get that Star Fox Adventure remake or Chibi Robo or, like I said, new F-Zero. The possibilities are endless, and I hope that Nintendo finally revives these old kind of dormant franchises after so long. Because, just like me, there's fans out there that enjoy these games and have wanted Nintendo to make a new one for who knows how many years now. Then they announced Nintendo Switch World Tour, which is kind of like a showcase of the Switch 2's capabilities. It looks awesome, right? Like, it looks like something you play maybe once or twice. It has different mini games, kind of reminds me of Mario Maker and like Astro's Playroom on the PlayStation. But the thing that immediately just like ruined all that excitement for this little kind of like demo feature game is that this is not a free downloadable game. Or it's not even bundled in with the Switch 2 itself. No, you have to buy this as a game. Like, this should be something that's free and it's included with every single Nintendo Switch 2. So people can see like what's possible with this console, right? Astro's Playroom did exactly that, and then it became its own game and won Game of the Year. Why can't you do the same for this one thing? Like, I believe every single console that comes out should have a free, like, kind of like a game demo thing that utilizes all the new features of that console and shows the players exactly what it's capable of. They also announced Bravely Default was getting a remaster too, and I had a heart attack. I screamed because at first I thought it was Final Fantasy IX Remake. Seeing the main character from like the back with her long hair and her white dress immediately made me think of Garnet from Final Fantasy IX. And I'm not the only one that thought that either. There's people all around the world who are watching the direct too. They thought the exact same thing. They thought that was Garnet. Only to realize, once the camera shifted, I was like, oh, it's Bravely Default. And it brought me a little tear. I hope we get that Final Fantasy IX remake eventually, but man, that pulled on the heartstrings right there. And now, speaking of Bravely Default, right, I am actually excited for this remaster, but I do have kind of like a negative view of it after this game made me erase my Final Fantasy IV save data. But I will say I do love the Street Pass mechanic that was on the original 3DS version. And the fact that you can let random people kind of slowly build your town in the game just by using the Street Pass feature was awesome. I think alone I spent 20 to 30 hours just doing that. I do also remember that this game was a bit hard, which is why I was actually grinding on the 3DS Bravely Default to level up with one hand, and in the other hand on the DSi I was playing Final Fantasy IV, slowly leveling up at the same time. Unfortunately, I died in Final Fantasy IV, but I was focused on Bravely Default, and so I was quickly spamming the continue button so I can get back into the game and, keep leveling up. But as I did that, I noticed that the intro started playing. That's when I noticed that the game actually, instead of pressing continue, it loaded a new game, and it overwrote my save, completely erasing 60 hours of gameplay just because I was leveling up Bravely Default on the other hand, and I was not focused on Final Fantasy IV. And like I said, all I had to do was walk straight, maybe like 10 steps, and I was at the final boss battle. And after that, I never went back to Bravely Default again. It's been a few years now since that's happened, and it still hurts me, right? One thing I will mention though is I love the music of Bravely Default. I have that like overworld theme burned in my brain from all of the, times I was running around and just trying to collect and level up in this game. It has a special place in my heart. Even though this game did hurt me, it does have a special place in my heart, especially that Street Pass feature. That was awesome. So I welcome these remasters, especially if they're priced anywhere from like $20 to $40, right? That seems reasonable. And it seems Nintendo has also learned from the Wii U days and there's a lot of new third-party developers bringing their games over to the Nintendo Switch 2. There's like Elden Ring was announced, Hogwarts Legacy, Tony Hawk 3 and 4 Remaster, Yakuza 0, Deltarune, Borderlands 4, Hollow Knight Silksong finally got like some kind of update after all these years. Final Fantasy 7 Remake is coming out to the Switch 2, as well as like a Bloodborne sequel called Dusk Bloods that is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 2, since Sony is being a booty hole and not doing anything with the series or this game. Like, people want a remaster and they're refusing to do anything with it. So From Software is like, hey, let's just make it ourselves, right? Let's make a sequel ourselves and put it on a Nintendo console instead. I don't know how Nintendo managed an exclusive like that, but that is insane. That's gonna win a lot of people to this console. And like I said, the fact that all these games are coming over is awesome, right? And I'm glad that more people are gonna get the chance to play these games that they either haven't played on other consoles or on the PC, right? The only thing that I'm worried about is if the Nintendo Switch 2 versions of these games, are they also going to be $80? I hope not. I hope they're maybe 40, right? Maybe bring them lower than that, right? But I doubt it. Overall, the Nintendo Switch 2 looks incredible, right? Like, it looks awesome. I love the new features. I love how compact it still is. I love that it's portable. I love that it's more powerful now. I love how all these games look, right? Not only that, but it was also confirmed that the Nintendo Switch 2 will get a midnight launch, right? Depending on if you're going to Best Buy or, you know, different stores. Some are having midnight launches, so that's gonna be exciting, right? Nintendo's new console on a midnight release. That's awesome. I really like seeing those come back. However, the more I hear about the expensive game prices, certain features being locked behind the Nintendo Switch Online service, and all the different paid upgrades for Switch 1 games, the more my excitement kind of slowly starts to chisel away. If I want a Nintendo Switch 2 and like, let's say, one game, at this point I'm gonna have to start selling my organs because things are getting very expensive. And not to mention all the new accessories that they announced, like that camera accessory and, you know, the GameCube controller, everything else. It's very, very expensive, and I don't like that at all. Not only that, but I do wish that the Nintendo Switch 2 can also screen share to Discord or like Twitch. It seems that the game chat feature is locked behind the Switch Online membership, which is very unfortunate because all the other consoles seem to do it for free. I don't know. I'm confused. Like I said, there's things that are awesome, but then there's things that are just confusing, and you know, but I guess that's Nintendo. Every time they do something, it's like, oh, that's so cool, but then, oh man, why'd you have to do that? I hope Nintendo reconsiders some of these weird decisions that they're making for the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm still excited, but I am a bit hesitant. Nintendo also avoided mentioning any kind of prices for the Nintendo Switch 2 in the Direct. They didn't mention the price of the Switch 2. They didn't mention the price of the games. They didn't mention the price of any upgrades, the cameras, nothing. You had to learn that on their website once the Direct was over, right? And then came, you know, the angry comments and everything. But man, Nintendo, like, what are you doing? But yeah, ladies and turds, with that said, there's a lot to think about with the Nintendo Switch 2. There's a lot of things that are still very confusing, and a lot of people are kind of taking the wrong way. There's a lot of things that Nintendo needs to kind of do better instead of kind of like hiding certain things, and it seems very fishy on certain things that Nintendo's doing and not kind of being upfront about. With that said though, ladies and turds, are you picking up a Nintendo Switch 2? What games are you excited for? Is there anything you're waiting for to come out to make you want to get a Switch 2? Are you disappointed, right? Like, is there a feature or something that maybe you were hoping for would have been announced but wasn't? Feel free to share in the comments below. And with that said, ladies and turds, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting me on Patreon. And I'll see you all on another lovely video. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.